Reddit. What is the worst thing that happened at your school? Story 2. When I was in middle school, there was a big emphasis on crosswalk safety because a girl got hit by a car while walking to her bus stop. The mom ran after the car to confront the driver instead of getting her injured daughter out of the street, and she was immediately run over again, killing her instantly. Pretty bad stuff. Story 3. We had a science teacher who was notoriously not all there and extremely quirky. He was also known for being the first one in the middle of a fight. I am sure there was some connection there. We actually saw him break up a fight, then get pulled out of class by the school administrators. He was pretty upset when he came back and opened up about it a little. I am not sure if he got in any real trouble or if it was just the conversation that upset him, but he explained that he got talked to, half-heartedly joked he got sent to the principal. Someone asked why he bothered if he knew he was going to get in trouble or even injured, and he had several times. His response really made me realize what a shithole the school was, but how genuine he was. He said that the administrators and the cops were too rough when breaking up fights. He did not like seeing kids get tased or slammed into the ground or dragged off of the property in handcuffs. If he could take a few punches, he did not understand why the cops at the school could not, and he did not see a reason for a couple of kids in a squabble to get arrested and permanently ruin their lives. To my knowledge, he still works at the school. We had a riot of sorts. Around 30 kids arrested, one pushed into a trophy case, another stabbed with the broken glass from the trophy case. No surprise he put himself right in the middle of it. Dude may have been a little weird, and definitely not the best teacher I ever had, but the world could use more teachers like that. Story 4. I remember watching a fight in high school. Kid who picked the fight against a larger football player was, of course, losing. As he darts between a row of cars, I can see him fumbling in his pocket. From the angle watching, I am probably the first person, other than the stabber, to know what is about to happen. A second later, he turns back to his pursuer and throws what looks like a shitty right hook punch to his opponent's left ribs. Really what happened was he stabbed the bigger kid in the left chest. If he had had a longer blade, he would have killed the kid. Realizing I just saw a stabbing on lunch break in the parking lot, me and my buddy Danny left quickly. We missed seeing the rest of the football team catch the kid and kick the shit out of him. The messed up part was, the kid who got stabbed was the one charged with assault. The stabber was suspended at the time, so he was not even supposed to be on campus. And he brought a knife to what looked to be an arranged fight that he had to show up to. Story 5. Someone tried to assassinate the physics teacher. Our high school was 3 stories. The math and science rooms were on the 3rd floor. During parent-teacher interviews, someone turned on all the natural gas taps in his classroom and left a lit candle on the floor. The idea being that, since natural gas rises, it would fill the room and explode when it touched the candle. Teacher found it only a few minutes after the would-be assassin left the room and was able to put out the candle. They never figured out who did it, to the best of my knowledge. Story 6. The seniors planned their senior prank to have a bunch of alarm clocks go off in lockers all over the school throughout the day. The idea was that by the time one locker was unlocked to turn off the alarm, another would be going off. Unfortunately for the seniors, the day they planned this happened to be the same day Obama was campaigning at the fairgrounds less than a mile away. The alarm clocks got mistaken as bomb threats, and just about every senior in the school was questioned by either police or teachers. Basically, it was just a huge misunderstanding that led to a whole bunch of shit. Story 7. My brother dated a girl briefly in 8th grade who later snapped in high school. She had convinced a group of 5 other people to commit to a plan to weld the high school doors shut and burn people with a homemade flamethrower and shoot people. The morning of the planned day, someone was tipped off and the cops called. The school went on lockdown for 7 hours, and they found the girl's parents taped up and stabbed a crazy number of times in their closet of their home. This was 3 years after my brother dated her. Story 8. A lot of this is second-hand because I was 10 when it happened, but here goes. A teacher at my elementary school was going through an extremely difficult divorce. Her husband was a generally angry guy, and he had really gone off the deep end when she served him the divorce papers. Also had 2 kids enrolled in the same school. So the husband goes missing in action for a week or 2, no contact with anyone unless it is through lawyers. Eventually he comes back, a whole lot calmer, and for another week or 2 there is an uneasy peace. During this time, both of them were removing their stuff from the home to live separately, always with witnesses, so nothing went down. One day, she shows up at school more distraught than usual, and leaves at lunch to go back to the house. The husband lured her there somehow. Most people think by tricking her to agree to a midday moving session, but it was a trap. She showed up. It was only him. and he killed her before turning the gun on himself. It was a small community, so it hit everyone really hard. Story 9. We had an old male dean who would bully a lot of the girls, as well as any special education students. Some speculated he may have harassed them further than bullying, most likely sexually. One day, long after I left, I heard he had cornered a special education kid alone in a room without their guide and was upsetting him. I do not think anybody knows exactly what happened, but I guess the student got violent, the dean tried to restrain him, and his eye got clawed out. Needless to say, the dean left the school for good. I would never wish that upon anybody, but we all could not help but think it may have been for a reason. Story 10. Well, I knew a girl who was born with a deformity in her legs, so she went in for this big surgery to reform or change the shape her bones grew in. I do not know all the details of the surgery. Anyway. She was off school for weeks, on crutches for 2 or 3 months, and finally got off of them. First day without crutches, she crosses the street from the convenience store to the school, gets nailed by a Jeep, breaks both her legs pretty badly. Crutches, for the rest of the year. Story 11. A suicide pact was successfully carried out between a rich/popular cheerleader and her wrong-side-of-the-tracks boyfriend from another school. When her parents forbade her from seeing him, they jumped off a cliff together to their deaths. Rumors indicated she initially survived the fall and suffered for hours. It was surreal watching reporters descend upon the school and all the opportunism that occurred as a result of the tragedy by both students and media groups. Story 12. Not really at my school, but when I was a junior, these 3 boys went out to this guy's house in the middle of nowhere to rob him. I guess he had a lot of guns and money and stuff that they wanted. When he opened the door, they started beating him up. And I guess they just wanted to beat him enough to where he could not fight back while they took his stuff, but they ended up beating him so bad that they killed him. 2 of them went on the run while the 3rd one showed up to school the next day. The police came and arrested him at school. That was a fun time. Story 13. Gym teacher had a hidden camera for years in the girls' locker room placed inside a washer with a do not open sign. For whatever reason, nobody ever opened it. A student that cut his grass decided to snoop in his house while the teacher was not home. He came across tapes named Last Look 03 and other names of that nature. Popped one into the VCR and saw the girls from our school on the tapes. It made some big news as this teacher was well respected, especially as a track and football coach. Story 14. We were a poor trailer park school with high rates of domestic and substance abuse. Worst incident I remember at school was one kid shooting another kid in the stomach over a bad drug deal. Did it right in front of everyone in the hall between classes. The worst thing to happen in general, though, was a classmate of mine breaking into an old woman's home to rob her, discovering she was home and murdering her with a baseball bat. That whole school felt like it was cursed, and people just got meaner there merely by walking inside its doors. Story 15. Going way back to elementary school in the mid-70s, a kid a couple of years older than me was walking/balancing along the top of a piece of playground equipment that was clearly not designed to be used in that fashion. Picture a 20-foot-long piece of cast-iron pipe about 3 feet above the blacktop playground. It was the 70s, remember. He fell and fractured his skull and died. Story 16. Multiple stories here. First one, kid exposed himself to like 6 different girls. They had all reported it. 6th finally got him expelled. He was 18. The school would not let the police get involved. Second one, teacher was having sex with students. Very obviously. Because the principal was retiring and did not care, he just made it where she could not close her door anymore. Finally, it gets out. School collects 6 years of evidence that she was doing this, then sat on it. Meanwhile, she quit, moved 2 counties over and started teaching there. There is more. Those were just 2 of the bigger issues. Had a series of sex offenders. One in particular had just been released from juvenile detention for getting a 13-year-old drunk and molesting her while he was 16. They let him back in. No idea why. He got arrested not too long after. Story 17. One of my classmates was attacked at a party by some idiot skinheads. Beat the shit out of him, kicked him with steel-toe boots, and sodomized him with the end of a patio umbrella. They also tried to carve a swastika into his chest, poured bleach over him to try to hide the evidence. He was in a medically induced coma for months. Actually, came back to school, but was never the same. A year after we graduated, he jumped off the side of a cruise ship. He was such a nice guy. It still just blows my mind the amount of hatred some people can hold. Rest in peace. Deep. Story 18. I am just going to copy-paste a story I have told in another thread years ago. Our senior class valedictorian was murdered by her gangbanger boyfriend just months before graduation. She was the super smart 4.0 student, helped motivate classmates to do well in school. I was one. She helped me pass classes my sophomore year just to be a good person, but had a thing for thugs. Loved guys in gangs, and you would never know it because she was your typical well-dressed, well-to-do white girl living in a farming town. Anyway, she broke up with this guy, and he started stalking her and had to get a restraining order, and all kinds of other crazy stuff happened. Well, after some serious drama when he showed up and threatened to kill her, yelling that if he could not have her, nobody could, and the police essentially did nothing about it, he waited in the bushes for her dad to leave for work the next morning, snuck in through her window that morning and shot her in the head while she slept. Killed himself, too. Dad got home and found them both dead after work. It rocked us to our core. I always remember that as the experience that made me hate the news media. They were bombarding us with questions, filming us crying and grieving. We all started walking to classes outside with our middle fingers up so they would not have any footage to use. It worked for the most part. I had dealt with death plenty with grandparents dying up to that point, but when it is unexpected and sudden for someone that has not even gotten old enough to vote yet, that is ducking rough. I see pictures of her pop up every year when people mourn the anniversary of her death, and it is so sad to think of how much she will never experience because some douche could not handle her not wanting him. Her family sued the police department for that and won a ducking mountain of money. When Dad was interviewed about it, the only thing he could say through his tears was, "My daughter is still dead. This money is not going to make that pain any easier. I just wanted the police to change their ways so nobody else has to go through this." If I'm not mistaken, the whole department was fired almost immediately after, and he donated all that money to charity. Story 19. We had a kid, let us call him Steve, who had some anger management issues. In kindergarten, he would get mad and throw things. In first grade, I was in class when he literally threw a chair, pushed over a desk, then punched and kicked a teacher. He was expelled, and came back in third grade because in our district, expulsion only lasted a year in most cases. In third grade, he pushed a girl up against a locker and choked her. He shut another kid in a locker too, and was really mean especially to a different girl with Down syndrome who could not talk and tell him to stop. Steve threw a chair again at a teacher and was expelled again. He came back again in fifth grade and got expelled after biting my friend and hitting him. My friend was helping him with math when Steve turned to him, bit him, and broke skin. My school ended up changing their policies at that point to allow for permanent expulsion. I think Steve ended up going to a school for kids with behavioral issues. Story 20. 2 students in my class died, both accidentally, during the last year and a half of high school. The first death got a lot of initial attention and was mourned over for weeks. A large percentage of the students went to the student's funeral. We had stuff dedicated to him. The second death seemed to have been forgotten about by the next morning. What is worse is that at our graduation ceremony, they brought 2 candles to light, each one signifying one of those students. The first one lit up and stayed going the whole time. The second one would not light even after them trying for an embarrassingly long time. Story 21. Well, it is still mostly speculation on the students' part because of how long ago it was, but there is a story that a few years back the seniors wanted to do a massive prank. They decided on bringing in a pig and greasing it up quite thoroughly, then releasing it into the school to run wild. The administrators and the resource officer struggled for a while trying to capture the animal, but they were unsuccessful. At this point, the pig decided that it wanted to stop in the lunchroom, which was occupied, to mooch some students' food. The resource officer was completely fed up at this point, and really just wanted to end the whole thing, so he pulled his 9mm and popped the pig right in the middle of the lunchroom. So, yeah, pig blood everywhere. Fun. We are not allowed to do senior pranks anymore. Story 22. They gave us lanyards to put our student IDs on so we could always be showing them, kind of a safety feature. Which turned into the opposite. Lots of people getting in trouble for not having the lanyards around their neck, but that was because they broke when people would pull on them to try to pull them off, or pull on them from the back to try to choke people. That lasted for half the year before they decided it was not such a good idea. Story 23. Not school, but college. I was enrolled in a chef training program. The head of our program was an old washed-up chef. He kind of used to be a big deal in our city, until he derailed his career by sleeping with a 16-year-old bakery apprentice. He was in his 50s at this time. Somehow, he bounced around town till he became our professor. He taught for about 10 years, and to everyone's knowledge, seemed to be back on the straight and narrow. Until he met this girl in my class, Haley. She was basically the archetype jailbait girl, braces, skinny, blonde, and always acted like a ditz. She would always flirt with our professor, relentlessly. Everything he did was accompanied by some sexual innuendo on her part, and she would always ask for help with whatever she was doing. I heard the rumors of what he did before, and simply thought she was tempting to see if any of it were true. Well, 2 weeks before our semester ended, we had all our classes canceled. We had a meeting with the now new head of our program, and I quickly noticed Haley was nowhere to be found. Turned out our chef went back to his old ways, and gave Haley a ride home one night after class. They pulled over to the side of the road and started ducking, and in mid-coitus were promptly hit by a semi-truck whose driver fell asleep at the wheel. Both survived, Haley broke both of her arms and one leg, and our professor was paralyzed from the waist down. Story 24, multiple things. We went on lockdown for over 3 hours, and students had to shit and pee in the trash cans. We were on lockdown because they thought someone walked by with a gun, but it was an umbrella. Another lockdown happened within that month as well because someone that went to the school was walking on the trail near our school with a gun case, but they had a bong inside. The boys at the school are on their last straw to even have access to the bathrooms. They hotbox the locker rooms, and in the main bathrooms people have smeared shit on the wall. There was another incident in the main bathroom where someone brought in their diarrhea from home in a Gatorade bottle, one with the nipple top, and sprayed it all over our newly renovated bathrooms. I hate high school. My friend just reminded me that someone also took an upper decker in the boys' bathroom recently, shitting on the top part of the toilet. No, I am not in the USA, I am in Canada. Story 25. A kid at my grade school, long after I graduated, died after her 8th grade graduation party because she had a terrible peanut allergy, and the Chinese place they ordered from was not as thorough about keeping peanuts out of the food as they claimed to be. The worst part is that the nurse's office had an EpiPen for her, but I heard the nurse was too afraid to use it for liability reasons. I still do not understand why a 13-year-old with a life-threatening allergy to an extremely common food was not allowed to hang on to her own EpiPen. Replies. Edit. U Keygrunk, who apparently went to the same grade school as me, posted this link detailing the awesome positive steps taken by folks within CPS after this incident to prevent this from ever happening again. So all you grumps moaning about how America only knows how to solve things with lawsuits can read this, and let a little bit of light into your shriveled hearts. Further edit. Now that so many people have read this, I feel bad for saying the nurse did not step in because they were afraid of liability. I was not there, and I do not know what was going on in their head. Story 26. Let's see. Goldfish being kept in the bathroom sink with the drain closed so the water would not drain out. Somehow managed to set a toilet on fire, did not last long, fire department was not even called. Theft of a urinal. Literally took it off the wall and left the school. Smoke bomb in the same bathroom as these former 3. My friend was on acid and having a really bad trip while cutting class. Some teachers were trying to calm him down, and he was not having it. Principal comes by and asks the teachers to let him go, but my friend goes apeshit and slugs the principal in the face. Went to a mental asylum for the I forgot what number, th time, and otherwise had no consequences. Various sexual acts in the back staircases, unused classrooms, basically anywhere after hours. One of the best high schools in the country. My ass. Story 27. Classmate died in a car wreck my junior year. He was an A student, athlete, good-looking, popular, never in trouble. He died because he was in a car with a few kids who decided to buy beer illegally. He was in the front passenger seat. A cop got behind them and flipped his lights on because they were speeding, and they ran for it knowing the beer would be a problem. They turned their headlights off. It was at night. Thinking they would be harder to see, they proceeded to hit a tree. The classmate in question had unbuckled his seatbelt to try and hide the beer under the seat as much as possible in case they got caught. When they hit the tree, he was thrown forward and broke his neck, dying instantly. The others in the car suffered only minor bumps and bruises. Story 28. During my senior year of high school, one of the school idiots decided to light one of the wrestling mats on fire in the gym. The mat ended up being highly flammable, engulfing the rest of the mats almost instantly. I remember I was finishing up football practice and was inside looking for my sister to go home, and I saw my principal Usain bolting down the hallway towards where the fire was. She screamed at me, "Get the F*** out of the building," and I had no idea what she was talking about until I went outside and smelled the smoke. We had our gym, locker rooms, equipment, and weight room all downstairs. By the end of it, we lost all of our downstairs. We were not able to play any competitive sports all year due to no gym or equipment. Our talent/senior show was cancelled because the smoke ruined the auditorium upstairs. We had no school for 2 weeks to fumigate and at least make the school safe. We could not get any of our cars out of the school parking lot for 5 days while they did an investigation, and after we went back to school, kids called out almost every day because of the headaches they received from the smell of smoke. All I know is the kid being a minor, the parents were sued, and they ended up paying millions. Story 29. A guy took a shit on a plate, microwaved it in the school cafeteria, climbed up a ladder to the vent system, and placed it right in front of the main air conditioning fan unit that connected to every room in the school. This was in early June, when it was unbearably humid as well. School year was cancelled indefinitely as the shit smell was a national biohazard. Story 30. I have got 2 incidents that immediately sprang to mind. In 6th grade, I had a friend. He tried to vault the tennis court net, got his foot stuck, and landed on his head and fractured his skull. He turned out fine, but he was bleeding out of his ears and nose, and it scared the shit out of the rest of us. Another friend in 6th grade tried climbing a pole, said pole had a hook to hold the bottom of a volleyball net, to get his hat that some girls threw on the top. He retrieved it and slid down, catching his ball sack on the hook and ripping it open to the point of needing several stitches. Story 31. Bomb threat, I guess. The actual worst part was that we had to sit outside in the football stadium for over 3 hours when it was about 90 degrees out with heavy humidity and no shade. None of the students took the bomb threat seriously because most of us knew who it was. New kid who was a compulsive liar and clearly had some serial criminal hints. The police even came and got the kid from the crowd and nobody really reacted, never saw the kid again. Story 32 had an asshole teacher who was prone to violent outbursts. One day, near the end of the year, a kid asks if she will be teaching here next year. Some kid replies, "You will not even be here next year, so why do you care?" Because the kid was moving away. The teacher straight up started sobbing, ugly sobbing. Turns out she was getting fired that year and thought the kid was talking about her. You had to feel a little bad. Story 33. Freshman year was full of excitement. Here is a small list, with what the school collectively decided was the worst at the end. Our school was next to a hospital, and the hospital had a ton of construction going on. The workers hit a gas line, and it leaked into the school. We had to get evacuated and stood in an empty lot a block away for 2 hours in the summer heat before they actually canceled school. A deer delayed the start of classes in the winter by rampaging through the basement of the school, destroying lockers and breaking glass and stuff. Some idiots would randomly spray mace in the most crowded hallway after pulling the fire alarm. This went on pretty often for a few months before the team of culprits was caught. During the 5th period one day, our school got put on lockdown. A man did an armed robbery a block away at Osco's Drug and ran into our school to hide. All lights were turned off, doors barricaded, entire classes were crowded in the corners of their rooms not visible from the door. We stayed that way for over an hour. Cops and dogs were all over our school. A lot of kids were freaking out. Once the school was deemed safe, the school officials decided we should just remain in our 5th-hour class for the rest of the day. For a lot of kids, I learned afterward, this meant they had pop quizzes for the remainder of the school day. Most kids had more classwork tacked on, it seemed. My class, however, had a big party the whole time. It was English, and we were doing presentations of how-to essays. Some kids brought in pizza for the class and explained how it was made. One girl brought in Kool-Aid. One boy brought his Xbox to explain how to put LED lights on it, so we had video games, too. It was pretty ducking awesome. Story 34. My middle and high school were the same school, but separate buildings. When I was in middle school, after school, all the high school kids are outside and a bunch of college kids show up. They start arguing for a bit, and then a fight breaks loose. Next thing I know, the college kids were surrounded by all our high school kids, and all I see is hands and belts flailing around. After things calm down a bit, I stand on a wall to get a good look. I see this one guy flailing his arm around yelling, while others calm him down. I look at his other hand on his face covered in blood. Apparently, one of the college kids had a knife and cut a couple of people. He got his eye cut. They continued to fight for the next day or two after school. On the bright side, the one dude got a badass scar on his face. P.S. This was almost recreated when I was in high school, and we somehow ended up in some kind of turf war over a nearby park with another high school that lasted 3 days. Story 35. The Beer Bottle Girl. there was this chick in grade 9 who was hell-bent on getting in with the senior crowd. She was known to offer popular senior guys sexual favors to try and get in with their social group, but always got turned down. There was a senior party this one weekend, and she showed up totally wasted and climbing all over every guy. At some point, a bunch of guys took her into a bedroom and got a bunch of pictures of her sticking a beer bottle up her twat. That Monday, when classes let out for lunch, those same pictures were found plastered all over the school. The guys who did it never got in trouble because she refused to name them and ended up switching schools after that. Story 36. Not the worst, but an interesting story. Two single people, Nick and Rachel, fake names, are making out at a party. I thought Nick was a bit of a douche, and Rachel was a very innocent-seeming girl. Toward the end of the night, they go into another room to have sex. There were already a couple of people sleeping in the room at the time, and one person was awake for the entire time, and everybody around them knew what they were doing was consensual. For some reason, Rachel told all her friends that she was abused that night, and one of her guy friends, let's call him Jeff, got a group of guys to beat the shit out of him. I remember seeing Nick with a massive black eye and Rachel crying in the hallway with friends patting her on the back. Within a week, the guys that beat up Nick found out that Nick was innocent and beat the shit out of Jeff for telling them to do it. After this whole incident, Rachel went from extremely popular to being completely ignored after a few days and moved schools around 2 weeks later. The reason I tell this story is that it all started in my house, in my back room. Story 37. Been waiting to yell this story on here for a long time. I live in a rural town, not much to do around here. Well, one day this lad, let's call him Joe, gets it up in his head that it'll be a fun idea to have sex with a cow. Why? I couldn't tell you. I tried to talk him out of it, but he said no, he was going to do it just because. He had had girlfriends, that is, sex, before, and could have gotten one if he wanted to, so I don't know why he decided to go through with this. So anyways, he goes ahead and does the deed. Had sex with a cow. He's all proud of himself because he's done this thing that no one else has done, and he's trying to brag about it. I again tell Joe that it's a bad idea to brag about it. He had his fun, just let it go. But he said he thought everyone would get a real kick out of it at school, and had already made up his mind to tell everyone about it the next day. Okay, Joe, you do you. It's not going to work out for you, though. So he tells everyone, and what do you know, no one thought it was funny. No one laughed. Everyone thought he was a creep, naturally so, and he instantly became a social outcast. Damn it, Joe. Now you'd think the story would end there, but no, it gets worse. A few weeks later, his dad killed the cow. They had been raising it for meat, and it was the time of the year. So Joe has this idea that'll recover his social status and make him a school hero. A last-ditch attempt to become popular, if you will. He takes the head of the cow, still with skin and eyes and all on there, puts it in a trash bag, and sneaks it into school with him. He gets to class early that day, makes sure there's no one around, and gently places the head on top of the teacher's chair and tucks it back into the desk. If you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't see it until it was too late, until you pulled out the chair. Now, this wasn't the worst idea, I guess. He chose Mrs. Wheeler as his victim, and everyone hated that old bat. So I guess, in a way, his logic made sense. Pranking her would have restored some social standing, but he definitely went about it the wrong way. So class is starting, everyone's in their seats. And in comes the teacher. Except it's not Mrs. Wheeler, it's a substitute, a young, new teacher who had little experience with teaching. Oh, Joe. So she pulls out the chair and immediately screams at the top of her lungs and falls backward. The eyes were bulging out, tongue hanging out, blood dripping onto the floor, the whole shebang. And Joe's in the back of the class just laughing and laughing. Absolutely loses his shit, thinks he's so fucking funny. And a few other kids did chuckle and all, but they couldn't see the head behind the desk. They didn't know why the substitute screamed and fell backward, just that she did. Eventually, a few students got up and checked it out, and boy oh boy did they scream. No one was laughing then, besides Joe, of course. Long story short, the substitute who fell backward ended up breaking her coccyx and quickly dropped teaching as a career. Joe was expelled, obviously, and no one's heard much about him since then. That was a few years back. At least once a day, someone makes a joke about Joe the cowfucker. I still feel bad. Besides his social ineptness and mild sadistic streak, he really was a nice guy. Was always good at Mario Kart, kinda miss him. Edit. To clarify, I meant that I miss how we were friends before he showed his sadistic side. Don't really miss him so much as the good times we had together before all this shit went down.
Story 38. A few years after I left my high school, a boy beat a girl so terribly she was left hospitalized. He did it between classes, so there were a lot of people looking on, and none of the teachers or administrators could get to it soon enough because of the crowd. It just sickens me that people just looked on instead of stopping it. Story 39. One gang did a drive-by, shooting targeting someone from the rival gang. The target wasn't hit, but his crew came to school with machetes and proceeded to attack the other members in the hallway. We had cops on site for the rest of the year racial profiling us, since these were ethnic gang rivalries. The group of people I share ethnicity with are fairly racist, standoffish, so I avoid sitting with them anyway. But even though they weren't gang members, they still got watched carefully. I just sit with a mixed crew, since those were all my friends. Insane stuff. Story 40. Some 7th grader brought a gun to school to kill this other kid that was talking to his girl. He showed the gun off to his buddy, and his buddy told a teacher. Later that day, he got tackled before he took the gun out. Also, a few years back, we were in lockdown due to a bomb out in the parking lot. Lockdown till like 4 p.m., bomb squad, helicopters, and everything. Turns out it was just a potato launcher that was thrown out.
Story 41. I think the worst thing that happened at my school was a girl that committed suicide and the aftermath of it. One girl used her death as an excuse to be interviewed by the local news station. She even went as far as to post on Facebook, "Guys, I was on the news 3, though she deleted the post a few hours later, probably to stop the backlash she received. Her dad used the media attention as an excuse to lie about all the crap he did to her and tried to pin her suicide on her alleged bullies. From what I heard from her close friends, he would lock her out of the house if she wasn't home by a certain time and would leave her to sleep outside, among other things. Those who were hit especially hard by her death, who went to the counseling office, were told by a grief specialist employed by the school that she was selfish for taking her own life, and that they shouldn't be crying over her death. I could go on, but the aftermath was a total shit show. Story 42. My friend, that was a few years younger, Cody, was in an abusive family. He turned to drugs, got a DUI, and killed himself with a shotgun that Monday morning. He respected me, and I told him to cool it with the drugs, and he did only to relapse again. I was mad at the progress he had lost, so I didn't say anything the second time he started using again. Then he died. He shot himself in the bathroom, and his abusive parents let him bleed until they had enough time to flush and hide their drugs. A rumor went around saying he might have lived had they not, because the bullet went through his jaw and grazed an artery. It's consistent with human anatomy. And I'm buried in guilt, despite I know, if someone wants to die, they will regardless. His older brother killed himself a year or two later. I can't imagine what living conditions were like. Story 43. I went to a private Baptist school. One of my female friends was being sexually abused for months by one of the teachers. He taught the Bible class to make it worse. She approached her father first, who disregarded it as not true. Then she told another teacher, and finally the principal, all of whom disregarded the situation as falsified. Obviously, it was an attempt to protect their image. When she finally got a lawyer and pressed charges and ended up with a huge settlement and the guy behind bars, it all finally seemed to work out. But damn, what a clusterfuck. I hate that school church with a passion. This is just one of the many horrible things they did/do. Story 44. My junior year, the seniors didn't have a senior prank, so a few kids thought it would be hilarious to cause a diversion, then start a food fight. What really happened was the seniors were too chicken shit to do anything, which got this freshman talking about how he wants someone to start it and says, "Fuck it, give me something to throw." So I handed him a juice bag. Without hesitation, he launches it to the roof and it explodes. There was a silence for half a second before the entire cafeteria erupted in chaos. Food and juice flying everywhere, faculty struggling to keep control. It was beautiful. The seniors finally got the courage to release their distraction, which was a bunch of stupid roaches, but ended up dumping them on one girl. I've never seen a riot before, but this was totally out of control, and the weird thing is, it was so much fun, lol. Story 45. A girl's father shot his mother to death. This happened during elementary school. Wasn't very far away from our school. Me and a bunch of friends were playing football. We hear a bunch of loud popping noises coming from the building. We see the dad speeding off in his car at what seemed to be at least 45 miles per hour in an urban neighborhood. I jokingly say, what if he shot someone dead? And what happened next was the most terrifying scream I've ever heard in my life. My classmate was hysterically screaming as to what just happened. Her whole life turned upside down. At least 40 people started to gather around. She almost jumped off a bridge. Fortunately, a lot of people held her back. The father was caught on the border of Belgium. The story shocked everyone at our school. I'll never forget the look on her face. That was the very first time I actually heard gunfire in real life. Story 46. Our school takes school spirit very seriously. My sophomore year, we had a pep rally for a football game against our then rivals. Needless to say, a riot ensued. A teacher's arm was fractured when it was stepped on over and over by the stampede of kids descending the gym bleachers. Once the chaos had mobilized to the entire school, a teacher was hit in the head with a trash can that was thrown from the third floor to the second floor. It took the teachers, campus police, and administrators an hour to get everyone back to class. The trash cans are now locked to the hallway pillars with bike locks. Story 47. One of my classmates collapsed upon entering the classroom and hit his head on the teacher's desk on the way down. She told everyone to back up and give him room, and someone called 911. I went to get a wet paper towel for his head because I thought the hit was pretty bad, and we listened to him repeat, "I don't want to die, please, I don't want to die," over and over again. Turns out it was his heart that had the issue. He did pass away. It was terribly sad. Story 48. A number of things come to mind. The time a group of kids got absolutely wasted before school and proceeded to disrupt their classes and do things like vomit on a teacher. The creepy math teacher that was found to be looking at porn on his work computer. The well-liked chemistry teacher who went to jail for taking sexual pictures of his stepdaughter. The time some idiot student put a dead, putrid skunk in the cafeteria trash can. All students ended up getting sent home that day because the cafeteria couldn't serve food until certain cleanup measures were taken. This was all at a good Catholic school. Story 49. Probably the worst thing that happened at my school was chest club. A buddy's family was moving into a new house, and so they had the house bought but not moved in yet. So he would invite people over and they'd have fighting matches. They tried to keep chess club quiet, but when said buddy walked into school one day with a black eye, and another guy on the football team was also pretty bruised up, people kept asking, and it spread like wildfire. The coaches eventually found out and questioned. We eventually stopped getting worried about the inclination of people trying to get into chest club. There were videos on social media, even for a bit about it. They took them down and eventually took them down. Funny enough, the guy who started it was mentioned being president of chest club when he graduated. None of the parents understood, but us graduating got a good laugh. Story 50. The year after I got my Bachelor of Arts, I was still in the city and would be until 2005. A fellow student whom I didn't know hacked his father to death with an axe and nearly killed his mother, too. She survived with severe head injuries and horrible disfigurement. The kid got 50 years to life. Most recently, there was a huge scandal at the same school about faculty and administration covering up years of rampant sexual harassment by a cognitive science professor. Fun times in upstate New York. Story 51. The worst thing to happen to the whole school was the time there was a massive fight between like 10 dudes that included one guy swinging a heavy metal chain and connecting multiple times. Another used a mini bat to bludgeon the back of a guy's head till there was blood everywhere. Someone got their face smashed so hard into a car tire hub that the hub was bent and basically destroyed. That same car had like 20 people standing on it to see the fight. $5,000 plus bodywork and window damage. The fight ended when one guy pulled a knife and the other one pulled a gun. Everyone cleared out at that point. Unfortunately, there was a worse thing that happened to me and just a few others, but didn't affect the rest of the school. There was an apartment building across the street, and a guy jumped out the 20th floor right at the end of lunch. I saw the whole thing. Saw him fall, saw him bounce, saw him lie there. I later found out that he had just gone through a brutal divorce, went to the apartment for his daughter's birthday, and when his ex refused to let him in, he kicked in the door, ran to the balcony, and jumped. That one was actually the worst. Story 52. From South Florida, class of 2010, school with about 3,500 students. As a prank, a few seniors put a 6-foot dead alligator in an air conditioning unit of the main building on campus and cranked up the heat. The smell was beyond describable. Hazmat crews were called in. Industrial-sized air purifiers were placed throughout the building. The building was shut down for over a week. Classes were held in random corners of the school while the building was decontaminated and an entire new air conditioning system installed. This prank ended up costing somewhere in the ballpark of $50,000 when all was said and done. Turned out the principal's son was the main culprit. Story 53. In high school, I played football, and we had an away game about an hour and a half away that we traveled to by bus. On this bus ride, my teammate proceeded to masturbate in the back of the bus, while being cheered on by others, and then wiped his final product on the hair of some kid that was sleeping in the seat in front of him. Long story short, the kid got expelled, and 4 players got suspended for the next game. We missed the playoffs, and our head coach quoted, "God damn it, kid, you masturbated us right out of the playoffs." Story 54. We had a serial pooper for the entire 4 years. I went to a very small, 3-classroom school, and we had 2 bathrooms for probably about 150 students. Once every 3 months, he would strike, only in the men's room, smearing fecal matter all over the walls with his hands. We had to have the bathrooms monitored, and each student only got 3 bathroom passes per year, which was outrageous. He stopped for a while until they stopped monitoring using the passes, and then it kept happening again. The teachers eventually gave up because they couldn't catch the guy. Everyone was curious about who would do something so disgusting, and we all had our assumptions, but we couldn't figure out who it was. Story 55. To preface, I went to a school with a reputation for being the most elite prep school in my area, grade 9. There was this kid who was allowed in on bursaries in an attempt to make the school seem more affirmative and not just full of rich kids. This kid was troubled and never felt like he fit in, which led to him causing several fights and threats to all levels of students and administrators. Following one particularly nasty threat over Facebook, the police got involved and picked him up. At the time, he was trying to be flashy and would come to school with just wads of cash, which everyone found kind of odd, including the police. This suspicion, along with the fact that he was getting kicked out of school, meant they had to go through his locker and get all of his stuff out for him. In doing so, they found large quantities of drugs, weed, opiates, and a little cocaine, I believe. The kid was never allowed back in, and the vetting became much more intense for the bursary program. I don't believe he served any time because I played football against him about 2 years later, and he was still an angry individual who made numerous threats about how he was going to fuck my pretty boy and show me how public school boys play ball. He wasn't that good, so his threats just seemed laughable to me. Grade 12. We were on a winning streak, not losing a game in 4 years, and as a result, come homecoming, we needed to throw a wild party. Said party took place in some farmers' fields hidden by bushes. During this party, everyone gets extremely drunk, and this is where the problems start to arise. One girl gets alcohol poisoning, or drugged, not sure, and loses all control, starts biting people helping her and trying to run away. Another girl goes completely missing, and no one finds her until like 4 a.m. The next week it comes out that the missing girl claimed she was abused and didn't know by who, but everyone assumes it was a football player. The next day, all players get called into our auditorium, and one of the administrators tells us what's happening, and we might be contacted by the media, and under no terms were we allowed to talk about what happened, and not to worry because he will protect us all from anything going down. Super fucked. 3 weeks later, after all of this hysteria, and everyone questioning who they thought could have done this, the girl comes forward stating she wasn't abused, and was just lost, and assumed it must have happened to her in order for her to not know where anyone was until 4. So while nothing sinister actually happened, that we know for sure, it's left me with this fucked up memory of a school administrator trying to keep a potential rapist safe from his day in court. I could be wrong, and the guy had a better grasp of the situation than I had at the time, and knew that nothing was happening, and didn't want us to incriminate ourselves for underage drinking and trespassing on a farmer's property, but in the moment, I was shocked and sickened by what I heard. Story 56. This happened when I was 14. A girl in my year thought it would be a good idea to send a video of her masturbating to a boy she liked. As you can imagine, the video spread like wildfire and was eventually uploaded to Videos. It amassed over 35,000 views in 3 days before the person who uploaded it took it down. Pretty disgusting thing to happen. Story 57. Not my own school, but a school near me. A senior prank for a few guys was to grab a younger student, bundle them into a car, take them to a well-known girls-only school, which our school was affiliated with, and leave them tied to a tree outside the main entrance with a sign saying, "Stupid shit." Of course, a random passerby sees the bundling. They think it's a kidnapping. They call the police. They get a squadron of cars and a helicopter to help search for them. Arrests were made. I think 1 or 2 of the kidnappers got expelled, and I'm pretty sure the kid who was kidnapped then left the school soon after. Story 58. During my senior year of high school, we had 2 teachers get arrested for inappropriate videotaping of students. The first one would call girls up to his desk that were wearing skirts and then slide his iPad with his foot out from under the desk with the camera on. The second one taped a cell phone under the sink of the teacher's lounge bathroom with an app running that would take a picture every 3 seconds. The problem for him came when the bathroom was used by the special education students. Both of them ended up getting 6 months. Story 59. In high school, those graduating pull a prank on the school, which typically consists of a tailgate every year due to needing approval from the school for anything we do, so that was the usual. So in my junior year, one senior decided to buy 5,000 ladybugs online and released all of them into the school the night before. Needless to say, he didn't get to walk at graduation, was banned from going to prom and senior trip. Story 60. It was a secondary school in a very small town, so everybody knew each other. Some girls' nudes got leaked, and most of the people at school saw the photos. Now that's already a big deal, but what made it worse is that one of the teachers had it as well and didn't report it, so he was contributing. The principal set up a meeting with everybody's parents and had the main photo distributors, 4 guys, plus that teacher sit in front of all of our parents while they judged them and talked shit to them. All of this was in a small town in Mexico, and I'll never forget it. Story 61. A friend of mine and his idiot buddy set our high school on fire, causing the evacuation of 800 kids without jackets into a minus 25 degrees Celsius January in Ontario, Canada. Apparently, they had stolen a blowtorch from the tech wing and were fucking around in the school's basement, burning shit. Idiot dared my friend to light a t-shirt on fire and throw it on an antique coat rack. Friend says, no, so idiot does it himself. The school was built in 1885, and the coat rack was probably the original. It went up like, well, a 100-year-old wooden coat rack. I was sitting in the hall at the top of the stairs to the basement with my girlfriend at the time. The alarm goes off right as we see the smoke pluming out of the basement. 6 figures in damage total. Thousands in football equipment, antique desks, textbooks, and school clothing. Friend got expelled and convicted of mischief that ended with a suspended sentence. Idiot was also expelled and found guilty of mischief, but was given 2 years. Story 62. In junior high school, 2 girls went at it over a guy. I can't say it was the worst thing, but just to be clear, they were African-American women. They fought tooth and nail for about 5 minutes, full-blown punches. Then the one girl, Precious Blake, got her shirt and bra ripped off by the other girl. To everyone's surprise, that chick was still fighting, titties flapping everywhere and just enraged fighting. Then the gym teacher broke it up. This was 1993, but it was the talk of the next 2 years. Story 63. Our baseball team used to play a prank on the big in-town rival every year the day before the game. My senior year, some of the players from my school moved the opposing school's batting cage into the middle of the road. An officer saw it there, got out of his car to move it, and was struck by another car and killed. The kid that hit the officer, himself also a high school student on the way to class, wasn't charged with anything. The investigation ruled it a total accident. The players that moved the cage were never caught. This was in 2002. Story 64. Arson. It was at night, so no one was hurt. The person that did it tried to set the office areas ablaze. Investigators thought it was to destroy records or something. Firemen were able to put it out, but not before some good damage had been done. Also in the process, the gym floor was ruined by the water. It was all warped and popping up. No one was caught, but there were a lot of rumors that it was the mayor's nephew that did it, and also for the purpose of getting insurance money to upgrade and renovate instead of trying to pass a levy. Story 65. The boiler room caught on fire during a blizzard, which caused an asbestos problem in a section of the school. It could have been a lot worse. But the ventilation hadn't worked for over a decade, so they were able to contain the asbestos threat to just the metal shop and wood shop area. It was sealed off for months, and they had to cancel all shop classes for the rest of the year. Story 66. My very first semester in high school as a freshman, we had a rash of regular called-in bomb threats. The first 2 we were taken to the school stadium, in the southern sun, mind you, a majority of the day. After those 2, we were never out there more than an hour, but they continued to happen. Took several months before the calls stopped. Supposedly, they were some kids from another school doing favors for another small group in our school to get them out of tests. Story 67. I'm late, so this is probably going to get buried, but here's a few things that happened this year alone. A teacher committed suicide, he never showed any signs of depression, and he was incredibly awesome. A week later, a kid from our school also committed suicide. From what I heard, he was well respected and popular. A close friend in the school got hit by a car and killed instantly. His brother, who was driving, got put into a coma for months. This year hasn't been a good one. Story 68. I went to a progressive high school where 90% of the kids were white, including me, but that's irrelevant. It was very uncool to be racist at my school, especially toward black people. Cue a string of overnight break-ins at our school over the course of a couple of weeks, resulting in $50,000. $100,000 worth of computers, AV equipment, projectors, marching band instruments, etc., being stolen. The school security and outreach officer was black, one of the few black people on our campus. Word got out that administration wanted to investigate our black security officer, who was in charge of securing doors/gates/general access at our school when everyone was gone for the day. Well, us super wise and all-knowing white kids freaked out and basically called the administration racists because they wanted to investigate the black security officer, who had become a friend of ours over the years and was the only black person a lot of the white kids knew personally. So when admin wanted to investigate him, a lot of us took offense. He was our friend. The administration either heeded or pretended to heed our warning and pretended to call off the investigation. A few weeks later, our black security officer and friend disappeared suddenly without warning or explanation. Administration had carried out an investigation on him quietly, and with the help of local undercover police, found him to be the primary culprit with help from his buddies that had no association with our school. Man, the feeling of betrayal. Our school never recovered from all that lost equipment over the course of my career there. Dude was two-faced. Smiles, and slapping hands with us in the morning. Taking our shit that we couldn't afford to replace in the evening. I felt bad for the very few black kids that went to our school. A lot of white kids' tunes changed after the incident and acted as if the black students were just as responsible. Sad. Humans are jerks. Doesn't matter what color you are. We all have the capacity to hurt each other, and we should be careful with that power. Story 69. Sophomore girls started getting stalked by several internet predators. The school wouldn't do a damn thing. One of the girls found out that someone had been posting upskirt pictures of them with their personal information, location, and full names onto amateur porn and voyeur websites. The school would not do a damn thing still. The principal's daughter was one of the stalked girls, and she spent hours searching on those sites looking at traumatizing pictures of herself in order to find clues about who was doing it. The principal had to personally intervene because the school was reluctant to expel the guy responsible. I know that girl. She is my hero for finding out who did it when no one would do it for her. Not the police or the school. She found out who was putting her life in danger herself, and she is amazing to this day. Story 70. This was at a religious school when I was in 8th grade. In the 3 years I was there, the worst thing I was aware of happening was the senior sister of one of my classmates got expelled because she got pregnant. It was close to the end of the year, but they wouldn't let her finish. Hell and condemnation and all that. I never thought that was fair treatment. And then her parents forced her to marry the father. Story 71. I was in 3rd grade when 9/11s happened, and we got a bomb threat at my elementary school that same day. We had to evacuate and sit on the lawns of the houses across the street from the school. The teachers and administrators were being very hush-hush, so none of us had any idea why we were being evacuated, let alone what was happening outside of our school that day. Parents were picking kids up early, but I still didn't know what was going on until I got home, read the note they sent home with us, and watched the news. Definitely one of those flashbulb memories for me. Story 72. I remember from 8th grade that there were 2 seniors who were having sex in the parking lot and were caught because a class of 6th graders had gone outside to have a special outdoor class. Needless to say, the class of 6th graders all saw the 2 copulating and the seniors got expelled. The next day they talked about PDA and sexual misconduct on school property and shit like that. It was a fun week. Story 73. In grade school, one kid I knew had gasoline poured all over him and was set on fire. In middle school, we couldn't have water bottles due to kids bringing alcohol. People vaped in the band room closets. Since we practiced our instruments in those, the teacher didn't see nor care to check on us. I remember someone passed around dishwasher tablets, telling people to eat bleach. Even one of the students we had killed herself, and we had an assembly on that. In my freshman year of high school, my math teacher told us to never quit. He did about a week after school started. Turns out, people were threatening him, and they broke him when a student attempted to throw a chair at him. The school resource officer had to stay in the classroom until we all got moved to new teachers. Fights were very, very common too. Story 74. We had a dude, all lads public Catholic school in Ireland, who was known as the Phantom Shitter. He would strike once a year or so with some form of art involving his fecal matter. The admin never figured out who it was, and every time there was an incident, we would have an assembly about it, asking for information on that blessed fucked-up lad. Story 76. A student tossed a chair across the room because the teacher wasn't there. The dude walked out of the class and broke his fist on a locker. At other points during the year, he tried to date half the freshman class at once. And when they realized it 2 days later, lots of people tried to beat him up, and they got taken away in a police cruiser. Thankfully, he got expelled at the end of junior year for egging a teacher's car inside and out. He got off scot-free for everything but the egging. Story 77. A girl ran over her boyfriend in the student parking lot when he tried to break up with her. One of the female security officers got knocked up by a student. There was a student fight club held in the prop storage area behind the theater. Someone put a goat's head behind the band instrument lockers as their senior prank. An English teacher choked out a disruptive student. Story 78. This one doesn't involve death, just something really f***ed up. So there was a very, very popular guy, let's call him Cody, and an equally popular girl, let's call her Alyssa. Cody was the lead on our baseball team. He was one of those airhead super popular jocks that is at every high school. Alyssa was real popular too, but she was quiet and really smart and nice. So what happened is that Cody got Alyssa really, really drunk and started having sex with her. That's bad enough, but he also recorded it. He then proceeded to send the video to a group chat that had almost everyone in our grade, like 100 plus kids. Well, Cody got expelled for that and arrested for child pornography and all that shit. Alyssa, wrongfully, got kicked off the cheer squad, and everyone in the group chat had their phones confiscated by the police for a few weeks. It was a mess. Story 79, there was a scandal at my school involving sodomy. Apparently, during summer school, a high school, there was a woodworking class or masonry class or something like that where there were a lot of students. Since there were many students, the school provided 3 classrooms in order to fit them all in the course. However, there was only one teacher, so he couldn't keep an eye on every single student because there were students in each room. Apparently, some kid or kids shoved one of those thick metal wires used for construction up another kid's butt, while others were holding the poor kid. I don't know how much of the story is true, but that was the rumor that was going around, so it didn't matter if it was true or not because the damage was made. The kids got arrested, the victim was moved to another school, and the main sodomizer framed the teacher so that his sentence wouldn't be as harsh. The case went on for about 4 years until the teacher was proven innocent. He was freed, but unfortunately, he will never be able to be a teacher again, even if he was innocent. Story 80. Literally, the year after Columbine, a teacher at my middle school was shot. She alleged she was shot by an ex-student who was Hispanic. Turned out she had kept a gun in a hidden compartment of her purse and shot herself. She claimed it was a minority to propel her case's spotlight, only to have it backfire on her when the forensics came back that she had been shot close range. Story 81. The national championship high school baseball team was caught in a huge hazing scandal that involved alleged forced sexual acts on new team members. Where students should have been expelled, they were given a slap on the wrist, mainly because the school didn't want to lose their star players. If this happened today, it would bring public outcry and national news attention, but because this happened in the late 90s, nobody really knew about it outside of the town. Story 82. While working on our yearbook, the yearbook staff used to use placeholder words for people whose names they didn't know in group photo captions. The intention was to get the spacing right first, and go find the person's name later. The picture for the National Honor Society contained one person the staff didn't know by name. She happened to be the only black person in the photo. The staff used the placeholder Black Girl. They forgot to go back and find out her name. It went to print. Story 83. They drug test everyone in our school once a year, and you didn't know when it was your turn. To counteract that, we spray-painted Duck Second, the drug testing company, all over the school. They never even saw us on camera because we took a picture in the office of where all the cameras were pointed. Best senior prank ever. Story 84. Once my PE teacher didn't show up to take the class, and neither did anyone else. So the entire class had gotten changed into their kit, only to sit around wondering where she was. We had an assembly the next morning. She had died suddenly. My English teacher that day spent the morning quietly crying while we sat in a weird silence. And I had dropped out at this point, but my drama teacher, an amazingly sweet and passionate woman, passed away a couple of years after getting cancer a second time. Story 85. Juniors went insane after the seniors graduated. Junior Takeover Day, they called it, for the rite of passage of being at the top of the class hierarchy. I wasn't there, having graduated, but I heard all about glitter bombs, some band kid getting duct taped to a chair, supposedly with his consent, and someone putting honey on cling wrap and sticking it to people's cars. The honey would strip paint when removed. Story 86. Our school could never keep theater teachers for some reason. After one left to follow his dreams, he was replaced with a woman who almost killed a guy because she was drunk driving. Then after that, they replaced her with a guy who was cool all the way up until his girlfriend came into the school and tried picking a fight with one of the prettier female students in his class. Turns out, the teacher had taken pictures of the student's underwear that she was keeping in her gym bag, and his girlfriend found out. Instead of breaking up with him for being creepy and disgusting, she decided the best course of action would be to go and confront the student who had nothing to do with it. Our school was not very great. Story 87. Our school planned a water fight that quickly turned into a riot. People were arrested, people threw things. My friend got a face full of iced coffee. They humiliated a teacher by throwing ice water in her face in front of everyone. Someone threw a Coke can at our principal. People ripped down banners.
Story 88. I have two things that happened at my former high school. As to which one is worse, that's up to you guys to consider. This one's about to be a long read, by the way. 7 years ago, during 10th and 11th grade, the school systematically expelled students they didn't see fit to be at our school. They would find the smallest thing to pin them on and use that as cause for expulsion. For 2 years that happened, and some good friends of mine had to get switched. I still talk to some of them, but many ended up moving too far away, to schools outside the Los Angeles Unified School District. All that just to keep up their image of being a great school. People were angry about it, yet my school never received the backlash. The second thing that happened to our school was related to our most recent principal. One fact to mention is that this particular high school actually taught 4th grade to high school. I was one of the students that actually went there for the whole 9 years, so I saw a couple of principals in my time. Our first one, who retired around my time in 10th grade, was an outstanding principal, one who fit the great image the school once had. After he retired, that's when it all went downhill. For 10th grade to halfway through 11th, we cycled through 3 interim principals who were pretty bad, but nowhere near as bad as the next one to come. Let's call her Miss H. Miss H really caused the school to go to shit. I'm talking really crappy levels of upkeep, teams and clubs being cut out, financial problems that affected everyone, new rules that didn't make sense, and even falling asleep during the morning announcements she was giving, meetings with parents, and certain big crowd events where she's supposed to be talking. On top of all that, she mumbled everything she said, so everything she did say was basically moot. Now, I'm not downplaying anyone who can't project their voice, but there should be some level of articulation when you're a school principal. The worst part? She still had this job for 4 years after I left. One particular thing that was a little bit of a last straw for everyone was her implementation of bully-free zones. The idea was somewhat good, but not when the bully-free zones are literally 3 feet by 3 feet, squares placed sporadically around a few areas within the school. The idea was that once you ran into a square, an administrator would come to work out the issue. What this achieved, actually, was far more concentrated bullying. No one could see the squares from the main office or cafeteria area, so when kids would run to one, especially for the younger kids, this only made them a target for teasing and some physicality. Now, here's where things got dirty. An investigation was opened up by the district when too many parents complained, involving a planted administrator to report back anything out of the ordinary. What came out of that investigation was that it turned out Miss H had terrible dementia, even before she came to our school, but she was good friends with someone high up within the ranks of the district, and they had promised her the job and to not worry as long as that person was in charge. Miss H was fired, and so was her friend in the school district. The school has started to return to its former glory.